Most dentists aren't trained to run businesses, let alone scale them. This is the TechDental Podcast for dental leaders who want more than just tips. We give you systems, strategies, and straight answers. I'm Dr. Randeep, and each week I sit down with the operators, AI founders, entrepreneurs, and business leaders who are reshaping what's possible in dentistry. If you want a smarter, scalable, future-proof practice, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome back to the TechDental Podcast, where we explore how AI, automation, and data-driven thinking are reshaping dentistry's business models. Today I'm joined by Matthew Hadman, Head of Dental Groups at Patient Plan Direct. Matt sits at a really interesting vantage point, supporting hundreds of practices and DSOs through conversion, consolidation, and recurring revenue strategy. This episode focuses on the growth levers that matter right now: subscription stability, scalable systems, and how AI is accelerating the next wave of innovation. Matt, great to have you here. You've operated right across the spectrum, from practice floors to advising multi-site groups. So let me start with a big one. What's the single most underrated operational factor that determines whether a practice can genuinely scale into a group without chaos, margin erosion, or cultural drift?
I would say it's about having a really clear strategy. So lots of emerging or small groups that I deal with often want to take that next step up in terms of scalability. And I guess, having that visionary outlook is great, but actually the biggest stumbling block that I come across is that people don't make enough of a plan in terms of what that's going to look like. So, having 4 or 5 practices where perhaps you're still a business owner who's operating, delivering wet fingered dentistry still maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and you're still working in and across your practices, it's very different to then moving to 10 practices where not only do you now need to take a step back to lead that business, but also you've probably got to start thinking about centralised teams in terms of finance and operational support that sits just outside practice managers reporting directly into you. And I think the biggest stumbling block that people have is they don't think about how they're going to fill that middle gap. And they go on to buy practice number 9 or 10. And then once you've already scaled to that point, it's much harder to backfill, as opposed to sit down and think, right, I need to get this team in place. I need to get them upskilled. And then I will buy practice number 7, number 8, number 9 to make sure that you're doing it the right way around.
And speaking of stability and scale, recurring revenue has become one of the strongest shock absorbers for practices navigating uncertainty. Let's move into that a little bit more. This subscription-based model is becoming central to how dentistry grows, not just for cash flow, but for valuation and exit readiness. So the big question really here is, why are membership plans now viewed by investors as one of the clearest signals of operational maturity and predictable EBITDA, especially during acquisitions?
I would say it's because it's really the only way of giving yourself that financial security that sits independently to an NHS contract. So the risk of buying a private practice that operates or has operated entirely on fee per item or pay-as-you-go income is that there is absolutely no guarantee at the point of sale those patients are ever going to cross back over that threshold or return into the practice. So from an investor perspective, seeing that stable, fixed, predictable income that remains fixed and predictable even at times of uncertainty, it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience, but the COVID-19 pandemic showed huge stability in terms of that recurring revenue from plan patients, even when practices were unable to welcome patients into the practice for a period of time. So I think investors see security from that perspective. And then I also think it gives much better security from clinician retention, because again, clinicians, they're self-employed, members of the team, they're highly reliant on knowing that they've got a nice patient list that is going to come back. And, with the whole recruitment issues that currently face dentistry as a profession, being able to say to clinicians, we've got this list, we can see this predictable income, we can show you what spending has been like from those patients across the last 2, 3, 5 years. It gives much more security when you're looking to retain and recruit talent into the business as well.
A lot of this resilience becomes even more important when practices start looking beyond the NHS and leaning into private care. So Let's explore that shift a little bit. NHS to private conversion is happening everywhere, but doing it well requires discipline, communication, and data. So the key question here is, what's the one conversion lever that's consistently turns hesitant NHS patients into confident private plan adopters across multiple sites?
So from a patient perspective, it's about ensuring that as a business, you do not commoditize dentistry as part of the conversion process. So I think the absolute biggest put off to a patient is if they have a conversation with a practice member or they receive a letter or communication method from the practice about the conversion that talks about money, and all it talks about is monetary value and saving money and different ways to be seen, because all you then do is turn a real-time service into a commodity, and patients then have this whole cost fear of, oh, can I really afford this? It's another outgoing, and it creates much more hesitation or disruption in that conversion process. So the biggest and most important factor are that your communication that goes to patients and the ongoing conversations that happen by your practice team are all around the ongoing benefits to patients to be seen on an independent basis. And that is not talking about spreading the cost or saving money. It's talking about truly prevention-led dentistry in the 21st century that is trying to minimize that risk by regular recall of that patient requiring invasive treatment or waking up with raging toothache on a Saturday morning in the future.
Yeah, that's a really important point there. And once a practice or group goes private, brand identity becomes a strategic asset, which really brings us to something we see more and more. Groups don't just want plans, they want brand autonomy. So why is full white labeling becoming a strategic weapon almost for DSOs looking to protect loyalty, reduce churn, and strengthen brand equity post-acquisition?
So I think this comes about in two different ways, because DSOs generally have sort of one path or another that they take in terms of brand identity. So we have lots of these sort of mid-group DSOs who actually want each practice to retain its individual identity as it was at the point of acquisition, and to largely still feel like that independent, community-focused practice that it perhaps was before it was acquired by the DSO. Therefore, truly white-labeled plan offering is super important to that, to make sure that the practice doesn't feel like it's becoming part of a big corporate body. It wants to keep that independent feel. So you don't really want to be bringing in external partners like plan providers to support those practices, where then third-party brands are being promoted within that, because what we know is that those patients want to commit loyalty to their dentist and their practice. Other DSOs go about that actually their brand alone is very prominent and they rebrand at the point of acquisition, but then that ties much into the same message, that actually if that DSO brand is an important part of the offering to the patient, and that DSO is respected under that brand for whatever it's delivering, be that NHS access, be it, high quality private dentistry, then again, they want to be able to offer a plan that is consistent with their brand, not be able to say, well, we can do all of this, but actually, if you want a plan, you've got to go to a third-party provider. So whilst we work as the administrator in the background, having that truly white-labeled feel that gives full autonomy to the DSO around what they want to offer and how it is branded, really just helps strengthen their proposition.
And brand control is one thing, but the next real competitive edge is going to come from how well groups use technology and AI to operationalize that brand at scale. We're entering an era where data, automation, and AI-driven insights determine whether recurring revenue grows or plateaus. So which AI-driven capability, is it predictive churn, automated onboarding, or personalized plan recommendations, do you think is going to create the biggest uplift in retention and recurring revenue over the next 24 months?
So I think the automated onboarding is going to be the biggest thing. So the biggest barrier to having optimal signups in a practice is that largely signing up is driven by that front of house team who have already got a queue of patients waiting to pay for things, other day-to-day operational responsibilities. And as much as they want to try and promote a membership, they perhaps haven't always got the time to take the patient through the full sign-up process. So conversations get missed. Equally, you have patients who the practice talk to, and the patient says, all right, I'd like to just go away and think about this. But then it's is that patient ever followed up? That again, that requires a really key nurturing pipeline process to be able to make sure they're followed up. So I think if we could have automation that allows very quick and efficient signing up that the patient can just do there and then themselves, and is largely pre-populated by information already held in practice management systems, that reduces the burden on the front of house team. But equally, if somebody wants to go away and think about it, to be able to use technology to use email or text messaging facilities to just nurture that patient over the next 5, 10, 14 days, to get the touch points that are required to maximize sign up. I think that's going to be the biggest change for dental plans over the next couple of years.
Yeah, we're seeing the same pattern really across financial and operational data too. When practices start to unify their data numbers in a clean structure, then you can start leveraging these AI insights, and they start to compound, and it helps in decision making as well. And Matt, I wanted to explore a little bit more about the mindset behind leadership as well. So I always like to end our segments with a quick fire questions to get into the mindset behind how you operate, and hopefully our listeners can take some nuggets and insights away from that. So I would say first question really is, what's the mindset that's shaped your success in the dental industry?
Probably from very early on in my career, I learned about the McGregor's Theory X, Theory Y management styles. And I have always been super conscious of that in terms of how I lead my own team, how I support or mentor other people as they're building their own careers, that actually giving people autonomy and knowing that you naturally trust other people to do their jobs develops much better morale within that team. It gives you really creative opportunity to have a team of people who feel comfortable to feed ideas into you, which allows further development, versus that Theory X management style of actually the people just come to work to earn money and they're not really interested in what they're doing, and I'm going to kind of sit on their shoulder and micromanage. So I think that's been my biggest learning, and always been the focus of my mindset when I lead my own team. And in terms of how I've supported other people.
Awesome. And what's one trait you think separates good leaders from great ones during periods of change?
So I would say that the difference between a good leader and a great leader is somebody's ability to accept criticism. So it's okay wanting to lead a team and you've got a business, and while the going is good, everything is great. But often what you find is that then when things get a bit tougher and people want to give you feedback, if you get defensive and you start to take things personally and you become hesitant to that change, that's where leadership just fails off. And actually, were you really a leader, or were you just managing people? And managing something is very different to leading. Managing is just a set of objectives that you're trying to achieve an outcome for, whereas leading people is about influencing and sitting down with people and being able to say, this is what we need to achieve and how are we going to get there, and collectively, even when people aren't on the bus with you to start with, that you can influence them and educate them enough that they then feel committed to support you in that vision. And I think that really comes from the ability to actively listen to other people and take on board what they are saying. And I would say that's what makes a great leader.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And what's one hard lesson every future DSO leader needs to understand from your perspective?
That it's about having a voice of reason, I would say. So I think there's, many a time have I felt like I have been that voice of reason, and I've been that person on their shoulder saying, just calm down a minute, let's do this in a controlled way. So I think often C-suite level, you're sat there, you've got great vision, you know where the business wants to get to. Naturally, as humans, we can be quite impatient and we want to get there very quickly. But doing that could be very disruptive. And so sometimes it's about just taking a breath and saying, actually, rather than do this in 6 months, let's do it in 24. Let's create stages. Let's do it in a controlled way. And I would say when you do things in a controlled way, it may take a little bit longer, but it allows you to retain much more control. It allows much stronger and more meaningful relationships to be built across that period of change. And it really stabilizes everything, because if something goes wrong in phase one, you've got an ability to sit back and reflect and correct it before you move on. Whereas if you're kind of charging forward with stage 2, 3, 4 before phase one is even completed, you're much more likely to trip yourself up further down the line. So I would just say, just have that ability to take a breath, sit back, create a controlled and staged approach, as opposed to just charging forward to try and do everything overnight.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction there, Matt. And finally, I'd like you to finish this sentence. The future of dentistry belongs to those who
are patient-led and tech-focused, I would say, because I think dentistry is just fast evolving into being prevention-led, and that's going to be about treating a whole patient, not single-tooth dentistry, not fighting a problem, but actually understanding your patient, understanding them from a holistic perspective. And I think we've got to embrace technology. I see so many conversations where people are hesitant to embrace AI, and it's not about seeing that technology is taking over people's jobs, but it can really complement them. It's not about replacing a receptionist with a bot or an automated service, but it's about saying to this front of house team, you can now focus on looking after the people that are stood in front of you. And this technology system can do your email nurturing for you in a much more controlled way, where we can have standardized scripts that go out, and it's just workload taken off your shoulders. So it's making sure that things work together in harmony with one another, rather than one is more important than the other.
Fantastic. Matt, I really enjoyed this. Great insights into how subscription dentistry, automation, and strategic brand control are shaping growth across the sector. For anyone who wants to connect with you, Matt, or explore Patient Plan Direct, where can they connect with you?
They can find my LinkedIn. So just search my name, I'll come up. My surname's fairly obscure, so I don't think you'll find anybody else. You can contact me by email or my mobile, which are both on my LinkedIn, or just visit patientplandirect.co.uk.
Fantastic. And if you want more conversations where AI meets dentistry and innovation meets scalable business thinking, like, follow, share, and subscribe. You can reach us at www.techdental.com or email info@techdental.com. Alternatively, you can reach us on LinkedIn. I'm Dr. Randeep, and this is the Tech Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep innovating, keep learning, and join us for a front row seat into the dental AI revolution. Scaling a business isn't a dream, it's a decision. This is the Tech Dental Podcast. And if you found value today, follow, share, and subscribe. This is the edge every dental leader needs.